Hi, welcome to the Read Aloud for the Dreamwalker, a short story by R. Lucas. You can find this ebook on Ingot. The link is in the description. Chapter 2. The rain hadn't stopped. It drummed against the windshield as Corbin drove, a steady percussion that made Alora sleepy despite the coffee. The sky was the color of wet concrete, heavy and low, and the streets gleamed black under the tires. So, trash bags, Corbin said, pulling into the parking lot of a big box store. And batteries. And maybe some things for the living room, Alora added, already unbuckling her seatbelt. We need throw pillows and probably a rug. He made a sound that she accepted as agreement. His eyes were red rimmed, his face pale in the gray light. She wanted to cut their shopping trip short, tell him to get sleep, but he needed trash bags and batteries, so she said nothing. Inside, the store was fluorescent and vast. Alora wandered through the aisles, running her hands over fabric samples, holding up decorative bowls, debating between cream and beige. Corbin followed, his hands shoved in his pockets, saying very little. What do you think? She held up 2 throw pillows, nearly identical shades of taupe. He blinked at them. They're the same? They're not. This one has a warmer undertone, see? She held them side by side. His jaw worked, grinding back irritation. Sure, yeah, that one. She couldn't tell which one he pointed to, so she bought both. They left with a cart full of things that weren't trash bags or batteries. Corbin loaded them into the truck without comment, his movements mechanical. In the car, Alora scrolled through her phone, looking up home decor inspiration, showing him pictures. We could do something like this with the shelves, she said, turning the screen toward him. Or maybe more minimalist? I don't want it to feel cluttered. Whatever you want, babe. His voice was flat. When she looked at him, she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face, guilt twisted in her stomach. Actually, she said, maybe we should just go home. You need sleep. I'm fine. Corb, I'm fine. He pulled into another parking lot. A home goods store this time, sleeker than the last. You wanted to look at rugs, right? She had wanted to look at rugs, but now, watching him drag himself out of the car, she wished she'd kept her mouth shut. Still, she followed him inside. The rug section was overwhelming. Dozens of options spread across the floor in overlapping layers, geometric patterns, vintage Parisian styles, minimalist neutrals. Alora knelt on each one, testing the texture, the pile, the way the light caught the fibers. Corbin stood nearby, his weight shifting from foot to foot, his eyes half closed. This one, she said finally, pointing to a cream-colored wool rug with subtle gray stripes. Great. He was already walking toward the register. Wait, let me check the dimensions. She pulled out her phone, trying to remember the measurements of the living room. Actually, maybe we should measure again when we get home. I don't want to get the wrong size. He pressed his lips together as his hand went to his face, pressing at his temples like he was trying to hold his skull together. Alora, just pick one. Pick one. The words came out harder than he'd probably intended. She flinched, and immediately his expression softened. He exhaled, slow and controlled, and forced a smile. Sorry, I'm just tired. Get whichever one you want. We can return it if it doesn't fit. She bought the rug. They went to 2 more stores after that, a kitchen supply place where Alora agonized over dish tiles, a plant nursery where she debated succulents versus ferns. Corbin trailed behind her like a ghost, saying yes to everything, his eyes glassy. By the time they got home, the rain had thickened into a downpour. They hauled bags from the car to the apartment, both of them soaked by the second trip. Water dripped onto the carpet, onto the new rug still rolled in its packaging. Alora stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by purchases, and felt the weight of it all pressing down. I'll start dinner, she said, more to fill the silence than anything. Corbin didn't answer. He'd already disappeared into the bedroom. She unpacked the kitchen supplies first, lining up the new dish towels in a neat stack, arranging the utensils in their drawer. Then she started cooking. Something simple. Pasta, garlic, olive oil, comfort food. She worked quietly, listening to the rain and the occasional creak of the building settling. When she went to tell Corbin dinner was ready, she found him sprawled across the mattress, still in his damp clothes, fast asleep. He looked younger like this, peaceful, the lines of tension smoothed from his face. She watched him for a moment, guilt gnawing at her. He'd spent the entire day following her around stores, exhausted, and she dragged him through it anyway. She made his plate, covered it with foil, and put it in the fridge. Then she ate alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, trying not to feel the emptiness of the apartment around her. When she finally joined him in bed, he didn't stir. She curled against his back, careful not to wake him, and closed her eyes. Sleep pulled her under. The dream came on slow. At first, there was only warmth and the sense of being held. Then the warmth became hands. Then the hands became something more. He was tall. She knew this even though they were lying down, could feel the length of him pressed against her. Slim, with a dark fringe of hair that fell across his forehead, just barely covering his eyes. She tried to see his face, to make out the details, but it was like looking through water. Every time she focused, the features blurred and shifted, but she could feel him. His hands were on her waist, sliding under her shirt, fingers splaying across her ribs. They were warm, calloused in places, and they moved with a confidence that stole her breath. She arched into his touch, and he made a sound low in his throat, approval maybe, or hunger. His mouth found hers. The kiss was slow, deliberate, tasting of something sweet. He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, her body fitting against his like they'd done this 1,000 times before. His breath was warm against her neck, her collarbone, the hollow of her throat. Every exhale sent shivers down her spine. She pulled at his shirt, needing more, needing to feel skin against skin. He helped her, shrugging out of the fabric, and then his chest was bare under her palms. She traced the lines of muscle, the dip of his collarbone, the sharp jut of his hip bones. He felt real, more real than anything in the waking world. His hand slid lower, hooking into the waistband of her underwear. She should have stopped him. She should have said something, asked who he was, why she was there. But the questions evaporated under the heat of his touch. There was only this, the slide of fabric, the cool air against her skin, the weight of him settling between her thighs. He moved slowly, as though savoring every moment. His hands mapped her body, learning curves and angles, finding places that made her gasp. When he finally entered her, it was so gentle, so careful, that she almost cried. She wrapped herself around him, pulling him deeper, and he obliged, his rhythm steady and sure. It felt like drowning, like being consumed. She couldn't tell where she ended and he began. His breath in her ear, his hands gripping her hips, the roll of his body against hers. It built slowly, a pressure low in her belly that spread outward in waves. She tried to hold on to it, to stay in this moment, but it crested too fast, breaking over her in a rush that left her gasping. He followed soon after, his body going taut, and then collapsing against hers with a sigh that sounded almost sad. For a moment, they just breathed together, tangled in each other. Then he lifted his head, and she tried again to see his face. Dark hair, the shadow of a jawline, eyes she couldn't quite focus on. He smiled. She thought he smiled. It was hard to tell. "Alora," he said, and his voice was familiar in a way that made her chest ache. Then, he was gone. She woke with a gasp, her body slick with sweat, her heart pounding. The room was dark, rain still hammering against the window. Beside her, Corbin slept on, undisturbed. She pressed her thighs together and felt it. The ache, the soreness, the lingering sensation of being filled. It was impossible. She was in bed with Corbin, had been all night. But her body didn't care about logic. Her body knew what it had felt. She got up on shaking legs and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. In the mirror, her reflection looked wild. Hair messy, lips swollen, eyes wide. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to slow her breathing, trying to make sense of it. It was just a dream. Just a very vivid, very confusing dream. But when she went back to bed, She couldn't shake the feeling of phantom hands on her skin. She didn't tell Corbin about the dream. How could she? What would she even say? Instead, she made coffee, cooked breakfast, and pretended everything was normal. Corbin emerged from the bedroom looking marginally more human, though still tired. He kissed her temple, thanked her for letting him sleep, and disappeared into the makeshift office space he'd set up in the corner of the living room. He worked from home most days, hunched over his laptop, fielding calls and video meetings. Alora tried to stay quiet, moving through the apartment on tiptoe, keeping the TV volume low. She unpacked more boxes, arranged the new throw pillows, and unrolled the rug. Anything to keep her hands busy, her mind occupied. Around noon, her phone buzzed. Joss. Can I stop by today? I owe you wine. Alora smiled and typed back. Yes, come after 5. Corbin works until then. Perfect. See you then. The afternoon dragged. Alora cleaned the kitchen twice, rearranged the bookshelf, stared at the rain. When 5 o'clock finally came, she was pacing. Corbin closed his laptop and stretched, his spine cracking audibly. I'm meeting some friends for drinks. That okay? Oh, she tried to keep her voice light. Actually, Joss is coming over. I thought maybe you want to hang out with us. He was already pulling on his jacket. Nah, you guys should have girl time. I'll be back later. But you haven't seen Joss in months. She'd love to catch up. Alora. He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and gave her a look, patient but firm. I've been cooped up all day. I need to get out. Right, of course, she smiled. Have fun. He kissed her quickly and left. The apartment felt cavernous in his absence. Joss arrived 20 minutes later, shaking rain from her hair, holding 2 bottles of wine like trophies. I come bearing gifts and apologies for bailing on moving day. You're forgiven. Alora hugged her, breathing in the familiar smell of Joss's perfume, jasmine, and sandalwood. It made her feel grounded, less adrift. They settled on the couch, glasses poured, rain still drumming against the window. Joss looked around the apartment, taking in the new decor, the half-unpacked boxes. It's cute, she said, though her tone suggested she was trying to be kind. Very cozy? It's small. It's a starting point. Josh sipped her wine. So, how's cohabitation treating you? Good. Great, actually. Corbin's been amazing. Joss's eyes were sharp, assessing. Where's the man of the hour? Out with friends. And you didn't want to go? I wasn't invited. The words came out bitterly. She tried to soften them with a laugh. I mean, it's a guy's night. I didn't want to intrude. Right. Joss set down her glass. Alora, you know you can leave the apartment without him, right? Like, as a concept, you're allowed to have a life. I have a life. Do you? What have you done this week besides unpack and cook? Alora bristled. We just moved in. There's a lot to do. Sure, but maybe take a break. Go to a yoga class. Join a book club. Something that's just yours. You left your family back in Texas, but you went to college here. You know people. Go hang out. The suggestion sat wrong in Alora's chest. She didn't need to hang out. She had Corbin, had this apartment, had everything she wanted, didn't she? I'm fine, Joss. I know you are. Josh reached over, squeezed her hand. I just don't want you to lose yourself, you know? You moved away from everyone for him. That's a big deal. I moved for us. Okay. Josh pulled back, picking up her wine again. Just promise me you'll think about it. Alora nodded, though she had no intention of thinking about it. She changed the subject, eager to move on. I've been having the weirdest dreams. Josh perked up. Oh yeah? Tell me. Just really vivid, like intense. She felt her cheeks heat. Last night I had this dream about, someone? Someone who's not Corbin? Josh grinned, leaning forward. Scandalous. It's not funny. It kinda is. Come on, who is the dream guy? I don't know. I couldn't see his face, but it felt so real, Joss. When I woke up, I swear I could still feel. She trailed off, embarrassed. Joss laughed, loud and unrestrained. Oh my gosh, that sounds like one hell of a wet dream. I know how it sounds. It sounds like your subconscious is begging you to loosen up a little. Josh topped off their glasses. No offense, babe, but you've always been kind of a prude. Maybe your brain is trying to tell you to have some fun." Alora wanted to argue, to defend herself, but the words stuck. Was she a prude? Maybe. She and Corbin's sex life was fine, gentle, predictable, but nothing like the dream. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. "It was just a weird dream, that's all." "Sure." Josh clinked her glass against Alora's. "But if the Dreamwalker shows up again, get his number for me." They both laughed, and the tension broke. They talked about other things, Josh's nightmare boss, a trip she was planning, and the new restaurant downtown. But even as Alora nodded and smiled and refilled their glasses, part of her mind was somewhere else, thinking about dark hair and blurred features, thinking about hands that felt like Corbin's but weren't, thinking about the way the guy had said her name, like he'd been saying it his whole life. When Corbin came home hours later, smelling of beer and rain, Alora was still awake. He kissed her goodnight, mumbling something about being tired, and fell into bed. She lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing even out. She didn't want to sleep, didn't want to risk dreaming again. But eventually, exhaustion won. And when she closed her eyes, he was waiting. This has been a read-along of The Dreamwalker, a short story by R. Lucas, narrated by R. Lucas. Stay tuned for Chapter 3.